Hey everyone, thank you for joining us. I have Danielle here along with my kids, and we want to chat with you guys about how to keep your kids occupied while we are in this fun quarantine state. So I am just going to, sorry, I just want to open up another screen here so I can kind of see comments and stuff like that. So just bear with me one second.
I am also going to share this to my page while we're sitting here doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I just want to be able to see who's watching because I can't always do that. So thanks for joining us, Amy. So yeah, we are just going to chat about some things. I guess I just wanted to kind of share some tips and tricks of working with kids from home. And I have worked from home with little kids since Amelia was kind of before she was born, while I was pregnant, while I was on mat leave with her. So I guess while Nevaeh she was just 1, almost 2. And then even when Amelia was home, when she was born, I was working from home. So yeah, I feel like I've kind of walked through a large gamut of probably some of the hardest ages working from home with babies. And I will say I did cheat for a while, if you want to call it that. I had a nanny that came to the house a few days a week, but I've kind of always navigated having kids at home and working from home until a year ago when I opened up the Lighthouse Co-work, because I was like, I can't take this anymore. So I just needed, my own space and some community around me as well. And so, yeah, so that's a little bit. So I just wanted to chat. I mean, I have kind of school age children. So that's kind of where my brain is always at. And that's why I asked Danielle if she would come on and share some of her knowledge and insights. So Danielle is a day home provider. She runs her own day home, but she also owns and runs Embolden PDC, and I'll let her tell more about that. But she's a huge advocate, I believe, not just for kids, but for parents and for day home providers. And I really love just the different supports that she gives to different people. And I love even watching, as a parent, I love watching her Embolden page because she just shares such great information that I find valuable as a parent, and I don't have other kids. So I just always appreciate your knowledge and your insights, Danielle. So yeah, so I have some questions that I'm going to ask her. And yeah, we're just going to kind of go through some of that. And so if you guys have other questions that you want to add on, please comment and ask your questions. I would love your feedback. And but I also wanted to introduce you to my kids. They heard that I was doing this call and I was chatting with them about it, and they asked if they could be a part. And so I wanted them to share maybe some of the things really quickly, and then I'm going to send them away so they're not too distracting. They can go play outside. And but I wanted you guys to share with other parents, what are some things that mom and dad have done that help you guys stay occupied while we're working? You want to start?
Let us watch YouTube videos after we're done all of our homework.
Yep. So screen time, that's a real thing in our house. And with all this quarantine stuff, I have become really chill about screen time, where before I was like, no, you can't go on screens. And we'd have days without any screen time and days without shows. And it was like no devices on weekdays. And that has definitely gone out the window. So especially because schoolwork is done on a computer. So that has for sure changed. What else? Anything else?
We go play outside.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything mom and dad does that helps you stay occupied, helps you kind of know what kinds of things you can do?
Make a list.
Yeah, we're going to share that list in a little bit. And Nevaeh actually typed it up and in Canva and created a worksheet kind of thing that we can share with you. So
yep, she did a great job.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
I don't know.
Okay. What about you, Nevaeh? What's some things that help you guys stay where mom and dad can do our work and have our meetings without you guys interrupting us?
Like Amelia said, make a list of things that we can do. Also, play outside a lot after if you need a break of screen time in school work. tell your kids to just take a break of screen time for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because sometimes too much screens makes us not feel good, like mentally, right? Yeah, makes us emotional and grumpy, and I think that's true for kids and adults. Like,
I went to the
actually,
trailer because he was so grumpy.
he's not actually. My husband's outside having a meeting right now, so I
love
joked
it.
that my husband needed a mini vacation in our trailer in the backyard
That's smart.
to have
And
some
it's
alone
true.
time.
We're gonna send him to sleep in the trailer on Saturday.
Yeah, maybe.
Yes.
So when the kids are talking about making a list, I think my big thing with that is age appropriately empowering your kids to make decisions
Mhm.
about what they're going to do and when they're going to do it based on kind of what's going on in their world. And so I've actually tried really hard not to enforce, like, you have to do schoolwork at this time of day and you have to do this and you have to have a snack at this time of day. But I have like a really rough, and I've kind of done this since they were babies. I'm not a real scheduled person. And so we sort of have a list of things that we could do, and that, you know, reminders. Hey, if you're feeling grumpy, maybe you need to eat something. Maybe you need to go outside. But I think empowering them to make those choices is really helpful. So they're not constantly interrupting and saying, Mom, what should I do next? Mom, I'm hungry. What can I have for a snack? It's like empower them with, 10 things. And I think teaching them what is healthy choices and teaching them, what is a healthy snack? What is a not healthy snack? Teaching them those kinds of things so that they understand that they need a healthy snack before they have an unhealthy snack. And then when they make those choices so that they're not interrupting you, you're not frustrated that they've eaten junk food all day or whatever. So, and I mean,
Okay.
that applies for my age of kids. Obviously, if you have a 2-year-old, that's different. But, and then I think another big thing with that was like empowering them to get themselves a snack or teaching them like basic age appropriate cooking. So, I mean, Nevaeh at probably 4 years old was making herself toast. And I'm like, that's pretty, she's not going to injure herself making toast. She's going to be okay. And I think teaching your kids age appropriate things that they can do on their own not just helps them developmentally, but it just takes a load off of
Yes.
so much. And I know I've even had conversations with working parents, and they're like, how do you have kids and run a business and do all of these things? I'm like, you have to get them to help you. You have to get your kids to help you. You have to get your spouse to help you. And that takes work and training. But once you do it, it's amazing the difference that it can make.
So worth it, like for their development, which we'll talk about a little bit in here too today, but it's just so good for them.
For sure. All right. Do you guys have anything else you want to say before you go play outside?
No.
All right.
I should yank this off my chin.
Don't. You're gonna get a purple chin. You guys see Caitlin go outside?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Okay.
Caitlin.
Go play outside. They haven't had any fresh air yet today.
Bye, girls.
But I've had a metal chin.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, go.
Yes, I have.
I love it.
So, Danielle, why don't you share a little bit? Because I know with my kids that I can kind of I can get about half an hour to an hour where I can be like, girls, I have a meeting. Don't come and bug me. But
Yeah.
what does that look like for different ages of kids? Like, what if I have a baby? What if I have,
Yeah.
preschoolers? What is like a realistic amount of time that people can expect to get their kids to kind of play independently so that they're not being frustrated by unrealistic expectations?
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing is that we need to have realistic expectations, because if we think that, our 2-year-old is going to sit down and do an activity for 40 minutes, that's probably not realistic and we're going to get frustrated. So I think what I'll do now is I'll take down our title and get that out of the way, and then I'll share my screen.
Awesome.
And figure out how we're going to do that. And then I'll hide my video for a little bit here, I think.
Maybe you should hide my video and throw yours and your slides up there if you want.
Sorry, I always forget that I have to hide my audio, not or my video, not my audio. Yeah, if I stop talking in the middle of it. We're still learning how to use this. Okay, are we good now? Okay. So you can tell me, Amber, if my slides change now that I'm gonna go ahead and okay. So yeah, as Amber said, I'm Danielle and I run Embolden Private Day Home Community. And so we're basically a private day home support network that connects parents and providers with the resources and support they need to navigate the private childcare industry. And so I'm just really grateful to come on here today and talk about entertaining our kiddos in quarantine. I have two of my own kiddos, and my day home is currently closed right now, but I am doing a lot of work with Embolden. And so I am experiencing this whole work from home with your children around kind of situation. And I'm just happy to sit here and chat with Amber today because she is very experienced in this department, and I'm still kind of learning the ropes. So, but I have some ideas that we can share and just some general information that we can go through. So, yeah, it's not so easy to work from home when we have our children in the mix, especially for those that have really young ones that need a lot of attention and supervision. It's hard to sit down and get things done, but I think if we just do a little bit of planning and we understand what we can expect from our kids, we can just kind of set aside blocks of time where we can be really productive and that kind of thing. So I kind of wanted to talk first about the benefits of independent play. Um, like Amber talked about already, it's just so good for kids to be given that independence to help them develop skills and to, yeah, just become their own little people. And really, we're not helping them if we're doing everything for them. So it kind of benefits both of us when we give them the freedom to kind of do their own thing. It helps with development and their resilience. Independent play helps build plenty of self skills like self-confidence, self-esteem, self-regulation, self-help, all those kinds of things. And independent kids make for great learners because when we have really regulated kids and they're confident and self-assured, then they're just open for really great learning opportunities. So we can talk a little bit about attention spans, like Amber asked. The experts say that children usually you can get about 2 to 3 minutes of focused attention out of them for every year of their age. And so I know everybody's probably thinking, oh my goodness, like how am I going to get anything done if I have really young children who are not going to sit for very long? So as you can see from this chart here, we've got 2 to 3 minutes for babies, 4 to 8 minutes for toddlers, 8 to 12 minutes for preschoolers, 12 to 18 minutes for kinder age. And then as you get older into the elementary grades, you're looking at like 18 to 30 minutes. I think with a little bit of preparation and planning that we can actually get a little bit more out of our kids. And I know that even babies, if you give them an activity that is really engaging, that you could probably get a solid 20-minute break with the baby playing on the floor nearby or what have you, or a toddler, if you set them up with an activity, you might be able to get a half an hour and then increase that time as you go. Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I know even my daughter, like two children are very different, and my first baby, she was pretty good. Like if I put her in the bouncer, she'd be happy for a bit, and then my second baby, she just wanted to be held, and so it just kind of depends. But like you said, if you get to know what your children are interested in, you can usually kind of stretch that attention span out a little bit. Okay, I think we can move along. So I guess we can talk a little bit about how do we increase those attention spans, and we'll share some tips and tricks to help everybody get some work done because I know that's super important. So my first tip would be to start small and increase your duration over time. So just like any other skill, that we all need to learn over our lifetimes. Attention span is something that we need to practice as well. And it's like any other muscle, and as you work it, it'll get stronger, and kids can kind of stretch that out over time. So if you've had a child that hasn't really done any independent play, or maybe they've been in a daycare setting where there's been lots of children around and lots of structure, and now you're working from home and you're trying to entertain them, start small with little blocks of time and just work your way up to having those longer periods of independent play. I know, right? I was researching this today, and there is lots of tips and tricks on the internet for adults actually, which I thought was fun. I know, right? Um, so my second tip and trick would be involve the whole body. So, I mean, it's even just like us. I mean, for myself, I have different ways that I like to engage with the world, and some things are more enjoyable to me than others, and kids are the same way. So, and kids are very like physical and hands-on and sensory driven. So if we can provide experiences for them that are full body experiences, they're more likely to be engaged and to really get into it. And that's where we can increase that attention span and increase that activity for longer periods of time. Because the more engaged the child is, the longer they'll spend on the activity. So I don't know if that's true for your kids, Amber, but yeah, there's no way they're going to keep at it if they don't enjoy it, for sure. And so then in addition, it's kind of goes in line with involving the whole body is catering to your child's uniqueness, because every child is different, and how they prefer to interact with the world is different, what interests them is different, and their preferred learning style is different. So if we can create activities that kind of hit on all of those things, and if your child is really into math, providing more opportunities that help them stretch that muscle, and if they like reading, providing activities that allow them to read, if they like to build, if they like to create, if they like to do art, those kinds of things. Just have a conversation with your kids and ask them what they're, what way they like to learn. Are they hands-on? Do they like to be taught, like, verbally? Do they like to watch videos? That kind of thing. To create activities that are really going to hit on all those areas so that they're more engaged and more inclined to participate. And then I have another tip would be to provide open-ended activities. So back in the day in the childcare world, it was very popular to do lots of themes and crafts and that sort of thing. And you would have like, your theme of the day, and you'd make a craft that went along with it. And it was an A to B kind of activity where you start here and this is where you're going to end up. And that was kind of the way things were done. But now research is showing that it's so much more beneficial when we do open-ended activities with our kids that allow them to be the creator and to plan out the activity and decide what it's going to look like or what direction they want to take it in and that kind of thing. And so with these open-ended activities, they are just so much better suited for having a longer and more engaged experience because there's no endpoint in mind. And so they're free to continue the activity as long as they're interested. Right. Yeah, I think that's actually a really common struggle for a lot of people, and even in the day home community as well, and even for myself, you'll think, "Oh, I have this great activity that I think the kids will love," and you suggest it to them, and they're like, "I'm not doing that." But I think it's just kind of like leading up to this independent play and like needing our kids to kind of learn it as they go. open-ended activities are kind of the same, because if we have kids that are coming from a very structured environment, like they're coming from school where they're kind of told how to do things, and they're coming from a daycare situation where they might have more structure throughout their day, they probably will feel very overwhelmed and confused if we just hand them a pile of stuff and say, here, create. Because most kids are kind of like, especially the younger ages, they're used to having their parents tell them what to do. It's like, oh, here, this is the clothes you're going to wear today. Oh, here, this is the snack you're going to eat today, those kinds of things. And so it can be a very overwhelming thing for them when we just kind of, here you go, and let them run wild with something. And it might be a little bit uncomfortable for them at first, but it is over time, they get used to it, and they'll get more creative, and they'll be able to have their own ideas. But what I have done in the past is I've created some prompts. Maybe like you could put out some suggestions of what they could be creating with the materials, not necessarily like this is what you have to do, but this is what you could do. For things like Magnetiles, I've put out like pictures of built objects that other children have done, or like buildings or stuff for inspiration, so that they can look at it and kind of gain some ideas from that. Because children, sometimes they don't have a super like strong imagination, even though we all think that kids kind of like just are inherently imaginative, but that's not necessarily true. Sometimes kids have a hard time picturing things just like we do. And so they just need a little bit of kind of a push in the right direction. No problem. So I think we'll move on now to some actual activity ideas. I've kind of broken things down into different age groups, and these are just a like little sampling of some stuff that I've done with some of my kids. There's like endless opportunities for all of these things, but for infants, it's tricky. I know people are like, how do I create activities for my baby when they aren't really interacting with things or that kind of thing? But that's just like a totally different mindset. Like babies do interact with their world, they do play, even though it doesn't really seem like it. So good activities for infants would be things like you can create a sensory spot where you put out different materials that they can feel, they can look at, they can smell, maybe depending on like what your situation is, and just letting them explore that area, making sure that it's safe and that you're nearby so that you can keep an eye on them, even if you're working, even if they're just on the floor right next to you, and just allowing them to explore the materials and kind of engage with things. And you could probably get a good 20 minutes out of them if you provide materials that they're really interested in. Another thing that I've also seen before is like a sensory hoop, where you take like a hula hoop and you tie different materials around the edge. And for babies that are just learning to move around, they can kind of go around the edge of the hula hoop and engage with the materials as they go along. So that's really great. And then, of course, tummy time and anything music related, whether you provide little music instruments or little shakers or even empty Tupperware containers for them to bang on. Those are all super duper awesome activities for babies. Yep. So toddlers, they are a little bit more, you can give a little bit more because they're a little bit, they don't need as much supervision as infants, but I mean, you're still probably going to have some of those kids that like to put everything in their mouth. So you're going to make sure that you're providing activities that are safe for them. But one that I love to do is Play-Doh trays. So I'll take Play-Doh, and you can make it or you can buy it. And you just take like, your little average dip tray or whatever you can get from the dollar store. And I put different materials in the tray that they can include in their Play-Doh. So they're really great activities for motor development and just all sorts of different things that they can do while they're incorporating the materials into the Play-Doh. And yeah, that's a really popular one with my toddlers for sure. This one I have on the screen here is adding Mr. Potato parts to Play-Doh so they can make little faces and they can put the arms in and all that kind of thing. And then the other one that's really good for toddlers is really just simple pens and paper. Put it out, let them go wild. And same thing, paint and letting them paint on miscellaneous objects or paper or different materials. And then just keeping in mind that they're going to make a huge mess and just making sure you're giving them a space that you can have a yes space where it's okay that they're making all of those messes and getting dirty. I know, right? I always try to like keep it really simple because I think a lot of people overthink things and they think that they have to do, and even myself as a day home provider, I think I have to do all these activities that are just really involved and like really complicated. And it's like, it doesn't have to be complicated. Our kids don't care. They just want to have fun. And that's really all that matters, right? So as we get into preschool age, again, their attention span's going to increase. They're going to be able to do a little bit more without your supervision, direct supervision. One of the really popular activities with my preschoolers are sensory bins. So I just put together a different variety of materials. The one I have in the picture here is a garden sensory bin, which is perfect for spring. And so this one I just put in dirt and then and this was all from the dollar store. I just put in some rocks and some fake flowers, some moss and little gardening cups. And then I put in some garden stakes with some letters on it just to add a literacy component. And my kids play with these things for like at least an hour. So again, make sure you give them a yes space because they're going to make a huge mess with it because it never stays in the bin. But yeah, no, this is a really great activity and my kids love it. And you can do anything in these bins. You can switch it out for the seasons. You can do snow in the winter. You can do different sensory things like bells or different smells if you use potpourri or that kind of thing. So just pretty much the options are endless on those ones. And then another one that kids of this age love, and I have another photo here, is water play. And my daughter will play in water for hours if I let her. And so if I ever have something where I have like a meeting that I need to do, or I need like my undivided attention on something, I'll put the baby down for a nap and I'll let my daughter play with water and just let her go wild. And she is entertained for like at least an hour. Yeah. Yep. I love it. Whatever works, right? Yeah, that's so true. And then the other one I have for preschoolers is just open-ended art, like we had talked about. So it's a really great age to kind of introduce that one. They can kind of do more things on their own. If you provide lots of different materials, like what I usually do with my day home kids is I just throw a bunch of stuff out on the table and I just let them go at it. And so I'll put out like scissors and glue and some kind of writing utensils, maybe crayons or pens, and then they just do whatever their little hearts desire. And I always love seeing what comes out of it because it's their own little creation and every single one is different from the other, which is really great too because they can be proud of it and they know that it's their own little creation, and so that works out really well. So then as we get into school age, it gets a little bit more independent because they're able to kind of do their own thing and understand what they need to meet their own needs and all that fun stuff. And so at this age, it's a lot of create your own fun, kind of like Nevaeh had talked about with her list and all the things on it, which I'll show you in just a second here. And she had lots of really great ideas for things that you can do when you're bored and just letting them figure it out because it's so good for them to have that independence and to have that critical thinking and problem solving and all those things that come with giving them the freedom to just kind of do their own thing. And I think with this age, lots of kids like to build and experiment. So giving them like a bunch of random boxes and just different materials that you find around the house and letting them build little creations with it. My kids every year love to do leprechaun trap building, and I just give them a bunch of different materials from the reuse center and they just build these little leprechaun traps and they spend days on that. And so I think it's just really great to help them foster all those skills and all that stuff that they need to. It's going to help them with their learning and just everything as they go out through the school, like through the grade levels and all of that. So actually, I think I have Nevaeh's. Yeah, so here is Nevaeh's list. And so what Nevaeh also made me realize too is that as you get into the school age activities, you can focus on things like mental health and encouraging their independence. And then of course, putting them to work because like, why not? Especially when we're at home, like they can be doing things around the house to help out and all of that stuff. So I don't know, this is Nevaeh. So if you want to talk about it, Amber. I love it. Oh, yeah, she did a great job. I love it. That's great. Well, and that'll keep her busy because she's interested in it, right? So it's perfect. Yeah, yeah, so good. Yeah, and I think it's really important just to teach our kids these skills right now because I know everybody's like panicking about making sure that we're homeschooling and that we're doing enough as parents and trying to like keep our kids afloat through all of this. And it's like, if we just give our kids the opportunity to just be themselves and make sure we're focusing on the important things like mental health and their independence, I think they're just going to be so much better off for it after all of this. And it's a really great opportunity for them to just kind of become their own people and just build on these really critical life skills. Yeah, yeah, take a breather. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so good. I agree. Yeah, I did. Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I'm like super duper passionate about this because I feel like in the current generation that we're in and raising our children, it is so much different nowadays than it was for us when we were growing up and even for our parents growing up. And so there's like this mentality that, it's not as safe anymore as it used to be previously, which is, if you look by statistics, it's just not true. It is still very safe for our kids to be playing outside in our yards without us, or even being permitted to go around the block on their bikes, depending on their age. But there's just this like whole like parent shaming and guilt that comes along with giving our kids the freedom to go do things without us being there hovering over them and watching everything they're doing. And so I created this graphic for my like the day home community and my members. It's based on the Alberta Day Home Standard. So keep in mind that this is a little bit more strict than what I would probably even say would be totally acceptable for your own children, because we have a lot more flexibility when it comes to our own children. But these are guidelines that the Alberta government has put out for day homes. And so these are people that are watching other people's children. And so, yeah, like when you have infants and, they're under that 2-year age, you're definitely going to want to make sure they're within sight at all times when they're awake. And if they're sleeping, they have an infant monitor, because they put everything in their mouth and they can get into trouble really quickly. But as you get older, you can start giving your kids a little bit more freedom to have unsupervised play, where you're not physically in the room. You can hear them maybe if they're, 4 and under. You can make sure that you're within hearing distance so you can keep an ear on them, but you're going to let them have those, 3 to 5 minutes of unsupervised play, um, so that they can kind of do their own thing. And then as they get older into the school ages, you can give them more freedom to go and do their thing for 5 to 10 minutes. They're allowed to play outside unsupervised as long as you can see them. And then beyond 9 years of age is when they really get to have that independence, and they can kind of do whatever they want. and the provider just needs to know where they are, and then they need to check frequently. So I think it's super important for kids to have time to play independently with their friends, to problem solve, and to, have that conflict resolution if they have an argument or a disagreement and they're able to work it out together, instead of having adults constantly in their space looking over their shoulder and watching everything they're doing, because kids cannot grow that way. They can't develop, they can't practice their skills. It'd be like your boss sitting there watching you do your job all the time. It's kind of the same concept. So it is very different. Yeah. Right. And that's the thing, right? Like and that's our first inkling is like, oh, they're arguing, we're supposed to step in and handle it. Whereas if we weren't there, what would they do? They'd have to handle it themselves, right? And I think there's like this mentality that's like, well, if I'm not watching, they're going to get hurt. Yeah, they probably are. And it's like, oh, if I'm not watching, they're going to get into trouble. Yeah, they probably are. But you know what? That's okay. Like, it is okay to give them a little bit of risk, as long as we know that it's within like a reasonable amount of risk, and that they're doing things safely. But they need to get hurt. They need to figure out how to have those conflicts and resolve them and all of those things, right? Yeah, so I'm like super big on independent play. I have a hard time in my day home because like I said, I'm caring for other people's children, and the way that my day home is set up, I'm like always within sight of my day home kids. And so I always try to like look busy or like clean or do dishes or something at least a little bit out of the day, so that they are getting that opportunity to have that independent play and like not feel like I'm sitting there staring at them while they're doing their thing. Because most of my kids are older. They don't need me to be playing with them. Like, don't get me wrong, if I'm invited, I will, but I'm not going to just sit there and play with them, because if they're having fun doing their own thing independently, then I'm going to let them do that. And I'm there if they need me, and they know that. But the more freedom we give our kids, the more that they don't even need us to help them navigate those conflicts and solve those problems and that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So again, thanks so much, Danielle. I really appreciate
No
this.
problem. Yeah, it's great. And I think you're such a great resource too for parents that are navigating this whole working thing. And yeah, it's just an interesting time right now. And yeah, thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. That was actually one other thing I really wanted to comment on. I think um, it's so, and no, this is no matter what age your kids are at, but it is good for your kids to see you working. Can I just say that?
Yeah.
It's okay for your kids to see you in a meeting. And I actually really kind of love about all this COVID stuff that kids get to see that of their parents. They kind of get to see what their parents do, and it's a little bit acceptable that, a kid jumps in on a video call, um and I think that's a good thing, and I'm excited to see how maybe our world lightens up a little bit about having kids kind of in the workplace, or having kids just around, and this idea that kids need to like, and I know this is like old school thinking, but that idea of like kids need to be not seen or heard. And I really think involving your kids is really powerful. And so, I mean, the example, my kids were so pumped to like jump on this call and, Nevaeh, to create that resource. And I think it's really huge that when you can involve your kids, you can take them to work with you or have them sit beside you. I just think it's really cool. So wherever you can, age appropriately, of course, but involve your kids in what you're doing. Let them see you working. It's okay. And help them understand that there are times when this is important and you can't interrupt me. And there are times when, actually you're the most important thing to me and I can let this work be
Yeah.
put to the
I
side.
totally agree.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you again, and I look forward to actually seeing you really soon.
I know, right?
Yeah, so thank you for this. Thank you for all your wisdom and resources, and thank you for being such a great advocate for parents and for day home providers. And if I can just say too, if you're at home and you've got your kids and you're thinking maybe I could take on other people's kids, and you need resources, Danielle is an amazing resource. Please reach out to her. I feel like anyone could be equipped with all of your tools to run.
That's the idea. Yeah, exactly. We want to help. If you're thinking about starting a private day home and you want to take in some kids and you want to do it legit, then definitely reach out to me and we can get you hooked up with all the forms and everything that you'll need and all the things you should be aware of before you start caring for children in your home.
And then you can actually do it well and do it with, with guidance and support, and not feel like you're figuring it out all on your own. So
that's right. Yeah.
Thanks for doing all that you do.
Perfect. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Danielle.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Bye.